Okay, hi everybody. Welcome to the off-campus training for the 2020-2021 academic year. It is presented by Residence Life, Campus Safety and Wellness Resource Center. We have condensed it down to one official training as opposed to years past where there were 2 or 3 sessions. My name is Valdez. I am the East Campus RLC, technically the person who oversees off-campus students as well, so that's why I am here for this.
And I'm Chris Walters, a health educator in the Wellness Resource Center.
I'm Officer Sid Santos with the Colorado Springs Police Department, assigned to Colorado College with campus safety.
Okay, so for eligibility, every student needs to have 6 semesters on campus. You have to attend one of these workshops or doing it online. You have to pass a conduct and damage billing check, which I do upon completion of the session, the workshop. You have to have a cumulative GPA of 2.0, and then you can talk to me later if you have any concerns. My email is lvaldez@coloradocollege.edu, lvaldez. For those 6 semesters on campus, if you were a winter start or you studied abroad or transferred, things like that, as long as you were enrolled full-time as a student, we give you that time so that way you don't have to wait, halfway through your senior year or anything like that to be able to live off campus. In the 3 years I've done this, I think there's been maybe 2 or 3 students who are ineligible to live off campus from it, so there should be no issues, but if there are any concerns, you will hear from the housing office regarding that. So the process is once you've gone through this and we do your background check and you pass that from the damage billing and from the conduct perspective, you will be sent the application from the housing office. It's a very, very short application. It only takes 30 seconds to 2 minutes to fill out. Then you can sign the lease and hopefully all your dreams come true, but hopefully you also have larger dreams than that. So why do people live off campus? Typically it's for more freedom. You're off the meal plan, you live with a bunch of friends, and you have no RAs, which is viewed as a plus amongst some. So the common complaints of living off campus: there's a poor response time for problems, a lack of proximity to campus resources, you got break-ins and thefts and such. Sometimes there's poor landlords and neighborhood complaints. These are kind of the topics that we'll be covering in this slideshow. For my part, is how to kind of avoid these complaints and what to do moving forward from them. So to choose an apartment and house, there's a lot of slides I'm going to go through rather quick because most students at this point have already signed a lease, and so I don't want to waste time going through all of these. So these are some things to think about here. You can pause the video if you want to look through those, but they're all pretty self-explanatory. If you have not signed a lease, the biggest thing is to talk to the current tenants, because remember, keep in mind the landlord is running a business, so they might not always present the whole picture. Big thing here is don't make verbal agreements for anything. Make sure you are reading your lease, take it with you. Don't feel like you should never be pressured to sign a lease right in the moment. You should be given time to be able to take the lease with you, read through it, have people read through it if you'd like before you sign. Create your own room condition form. You know how you all sign those forms when you come to your space that RAs have filled out for you that says what the current damages and things are. A lot of times landlords won't do that, so you should make your own so you can notify what the damages are beforehand, so that way you're not charged at the end of the year for existing damages. Joint and several liability is a wonderful thing. Not at all. It essentially says if damage is caused in one area, it could be everyone else's responsibility. So if you have a hole in your wall in your room, the entire house could still be liable for the damages. Neighbor relations. This is where the big stuff comes into play of what normally impacts our students living off campus. So neighbors, they typically won't make an effort to meet you, so you should create that relationship and introduce yourself. A lot of times we have students who will deliver cookies or put notes on people's doors, things like that. I'm not going to tell you all how to make those relationships, but it is something that you should continuously do. None of you are able to sustain a relationship by meeting a person one time and then never speaking to them again and having a solid relationship with that person, so you want to make sure that you're continuing to build that relationship throughout the year. The biggest thing for that reason is that the difference between them calling campus safety or Colorado Springs Police Department and contacting you directly could be based on that relationship you build. Please keep your property clean. Remember, reasonable noise. One thing that I always tell students to do if they're going to be hosting a party is that the first thing, you should walk around the block to see how loud it is. Once you get music started and things like that, take a walk around, and if you're 3, 4, 5 houses down from your house and you're able to hear the music pretty clearly, obviously that's a good time to turn it down. Turn up during the week. A lot of folks will be working during the week, and so neighbors are going to be a lot less reasonable to noise during the week. If you're having something on Wednesday night or something, they realistically are going to have work the next morning, and so they're not going to be as patient. We do often hear from families and things that live around the neighborhood who are a little more patient on the weekends because they expect that that's when folks are making noise. So just be mindful of that. If you're going to keep people from hanging around outside, a lot of noise complaints are called because there's people who are gathered in the front yard, whether because they're waiting to find out the next place they're going to, they're waiting for friends to come to. A lot of times that noise being made from people hanging around in the front yard causes a noise complaint, and that does fall back on the owners of the home or the people who are living at the home. Windows open, obviously noise and music is going to filter out, so you might want to keep those closed. You might also want to make sure the parties stay inside. A lot of times, especially at the beginning of the year, we have folks who just completely forfeit the party from inside and move it completely outdoors. And obviously noise is going to move around in that capacity. You have every right to kick people out of your place and off of your property, so be sure to do so if it's getting real noisy. So the Pathfinder, if you don't know, is the student code of conduct. A lot of times students have never even heard of it, which is funny. You sign a contract saying that you will be the Pathfinder when you come to this college, so you should be familiar with it. The whole reason for it is just so you all know your rights and abilities throughout the conduct process, or throughout basically your existence at Colorado College, and know what you are in the right to do and not to do. These things from the Pathfinder that will impact you the most living off campus, though, are maintaining positive neighbor relations, noise complaints, hosting a party without first registering, providing alcohol to underage students, unmonitored sources of alcohol, public urination, which happens all the time, littering happens a lot as well. And then anytime you're serving alcohol, you are assuming potential liability. So if 3-4 people are being transferred from your house to the hospital, they're all coming from the same house, that could fall back on you all. So that's my favorite one of the whole presentation. So registering your party, register it on the CC website. It's super simple. It's another one of those forms that takes all of 2 minutes to do. You have to have a sober host. The reason we ask for a sober host is so if emergency services were to be dispatched to your space, whether for fire, someone's passed out, something was broken or damaged, really anything it is, we want our emergency services to know exactly who they're going to be contacting in that space. That will allow folks to be able to immediately find them without having to navigate the house looking for someone sober enough to communicate with. When you interact with Campus Safety and Colorado Springs Police Department, please be as compliant and respectful as possible. That's going to be the biggest part that comes through in the conduct process. When we look through those reports, as we look to see if students were compliant or not. Like I said, registering is also not a free pass. At the beginning of the year, we had a lot of students who thought as long as they registered, then they were free from anything that happened. And that's not the case. It just shows kind of that initial responsibility. Party themes. It's weird that we have to continuously talk about this, but every year it still happens. Please don't have parties that are going to host specific events that are just cultural appropriation. It's 2020. It really shouldn't be that hard to do so, to having a party that doesn't make people feel like they're not included or safe in your space. So please be mindful of that and stay away from that. So after getting a noise complaint, Campus Safety has to respond. That is their protocol. That does not mean that you are immediately getting shut down or you are getting conduct write-up or anything like that documented. It just means that they have to respond and investigate the area. So the city ordinance is 100 feet. So that's the very first thing for noise. If the sound is heard from over 100 feet away, then yes, realistically, Campus Safety more than likely will probably ask you to shut down the party. If it's not more than 100 feet, but they're still able to identify some issues or some problems with it, then they still might come up and talk to you. There are times where they show up, they don't hear any noise, they even will walk straight up to the front door, still don't hear much noise, and they might just leave it at that and leave, or they might knock on the door and let you all know, like, hey, just so you know, we did get a noise complaint, we're not hearing anything, so we're going to let you continue your night, have a good night. However, if they do have to shut down your party, it gets documented, goes through the conduct process. 9 out of 10 times it's going to go through me. If it's a first-time noise violation and everyone's compliant, the conversation is usually more just about how to avoid future issues. However, if we start having to meet repeatedly, that's when we start talking about probation on the house. It's usually a two-strike process. Frequency and severity play the biggest role. So if it's block 1 and, first Friday, 3 people are sent to the hospital, someone tries to punch a campus safety officer, realistically, I'm just immediately going to put you on probation. That's that severity role. But if it's, block 1, something happens, block 2, 2 things happen, that severity or that frequency is also just going to result in that probation. The difference for the house probation and individual probation is if the house is put on probation, that just means it's on a party ban. It does not mean you as an individual is on probation. It's just the house itself. So keep in mind, you don't live on campus anymore. We don't have keys. We don't pick up your trash or talk to your landlord. I've been asked to do landlord disputes. We constantly get asked when we're going to come for compost. Yeah, you're living off campus, so be off campus. You are still responsible to abide by the Pathfinder, though. Please don't think that now that just since you are no longer on the campus, it's a free-for-all. You are still responsible to the Pathfinder. And finally, this is a throwback to the old PowerPoint, and I just think it's hilarious, so I always keep it into the PowerPoint now. It sounds like we're desperate, and we're not. But it says, people are more satisfied with their college experience when they live on campus. Grades tend to suffer when students live off campus. You have the rest of your life to live off campus. It's just, yeah, we ain't that desperate to keep you here. So by all means, live on a different part of Colorado Springs. Cottages have already gone through, but that's just some information there for you all on our cottages and apartments.
All right, so this is Officer Sid Santos with Campus Safety. The first thing we're going to talk about is drinking in public prohibited. Obviously, if you're under the age of 21, you're not legally allowed to drink anywhere in the state of Colorado. But this one specifically, if you're 21 years of age, you are allowed to drink, but you cannot drink at any public location. So here with the city ordinance, it indicates that there's nowhere that you can drink outside of private property unless the location is licensed. If you do drink in public, you can be cited with this ordinance, which is and I would say a citation actually means that you are getting a misdemeanor arrest for drinking in public. That would actually be documented on your record, law enforcement record. Marijuana falls under the same category. You are allowed to consume marijuana if you are 21 years of age, according to Colorado state law and City of Colorado Springs ordinances. But there are Pathfinder rules prohibiting that, and you have to confirm with that as far as the usage there. This would also be a citation misdemeanor arrest for these charges right here. If you are under 21 years of age and you have any marijuana in your possession, you can be cited for that as well. Noise prohibited, like what was stated earlier, 100 feet from your location. Part of that can also be an issue with the time of day. So if you have music playing at 2 o'clock in the morning versus 2 o'clock in the afternoon, that can be an issue. And the location. If you're in an apartment or a townhome, you're butting against another apartment or a townhome and causing noise to the extent that it's making items on the shelves next to it fall off, you can be cited for that if you do not cease the noise at that location. Typically, either campus safety will come over to your residence if you're near the campus, or a police officer with the City of Colorado Springs. This is something that can be cited to whoever is in charge of the property. So if it's an individual that's controlling, say, a stereo system, but it can also be cited to whoever is responsible for that property. So if your name is on the lease, whether you're at that location or not at that point in time, you can be cited for this ordinance. So again, the municipal summons is a serve and released arrest, and typically those are for misdemeanors only. Any felony arrests, you would end up going to jail over those. You are required to appear in court. If you do not appear in court in reference to a warrant, the first time in the City of Colorado Springs, those you would actually be served and released again by either a city marshal, or you'd be taken to one of the police stations to be served that summons to appear in court again. After multiple failures to appear, you will actually be taken to jail and you will have to be bonded out of jail over those charges. There is also civil liability. I'm not a lawyer, so I can't tell you specifically the issues with that, but someone can sue you for damages against them if you're interfering with their home, their property, because of the noise that you're creating, or any other disturbances if you're damaging property that belongs to your neighbors. CPTED, Crime Prevention Through Environmental Design. If you look around the Colorado College campus, I would hope that in any spaces that you're on campus that you feel safe moving from one point to another, because Colorado College cares about that and they want it to be as safe as it can be. Individual property owners are not required to have this. Some choose not to. But if you ever feel that there's an unsafe location on your property, something that makes you feel unsafe in that area, either myself or campus safety will go to the property that you're at and do an assessment of the property to give to you. And if you would like, you can give that to the property owner or management to see if they'll change that. A lot of the things that we recommend is the trimming down of bushes, usually down to 2 or 3 feet in height so no one can hide behind it. Trees, we would ask that property owners trim those up to about 6 feet. One, so people can't hide behind it. The other would be, so if you have a second story window, somebody can't climb up the tree to get into the window or a balcony on the second floor. And then the other big thing is the lighting on and around the property. What we ask people to do is have it illuminated well enough that you can see easily, not interfere with your neighbors, so you're not shining lights into their windows or through their front door, and also have them at a height that the light is not glaring, so as you're walking up the sidewalk that it's blinding you as you're walking up to your house, making it more difficult to see whether somebody's on the property or not. Here's some basic things again, just talking about the lights, the type of locks that you have on there, whether you have the primary lock, secondary lock. Something to think about if you have a door that has a window next to it, or for example, I went to do an assessment on one home. They had a plexiglass that they used to replace the window next to the door, held it in with caulking from a bathtub. I was able to just push my hand in easily, reach into the inside and turn the knob, unlock the door and turn the knob and enter the building. So there may be some things that you may not notice just as a resident there, but myself and campus safety has the experience to go through and look at some things that maybe you wouldn't notice as you're living there. Smoke detectors and carbon monoxide alarms, very important to have. With that, if your residence does not have a smoke detector or carbon monoxide alarm, campus safety has those available to install in the residence that you're at. Some of the issues, obviously, if you have a fire and you have the smoke, you want to be able to know that that's there. And the carbon monoxide alarms, the big concern is here we have an example of a actual CC alum who had won a auction for a night stay up in Aspen. That rental, which was required by law to have the carbon monoxide alarm, did not have one. There was carbon monoxide leaking into the house, and him and his family were killed by the carbon monoxide exposure.
All right, and this is Chris Walters with that Wellness Resource Center. And our role in this presentation is to really help you all think critically about your own well-being as you move off campus. And I'll just familiarize you real quick with our 7 domains of wellness. There's intellectual, lifelong learning, connecting curricular and co-curricular creativity, critical thinking, supporting academic engagement and success. Sociocultural, multicultural respect and competence, healthy, respectful interpersonal relationships, values of acceptance, fairness and justice, recognition of the contribution of the community to individual wellness and vice versa. Spiritual wellness, it's a belief system which contributes to a sense of purpose, hope and optimism, and a sense of belonging. Emotional wellness, expression of emotions, stress management, assertiveness, intimacy, balance between interdependency and independence. Physical wellness, physical fitness, healthy nutrition, medical awareness and disease prevention, injury prevention, healthy sleeping habits. Career, financial, That's purposeful and rewarding careers, financial stability and planning, household management skills, and finally, environmental wellness, awareness of and connection to surroundings, safety enhancement, understanding the impact of personal choices, stewardship of resources. So, in the live sessions, we facilitate a conversation between everybody who's in the room about the different challenges that you might face, now separating yourself from campus in some ways, and how you might reconnect to some of those things that are important to you on campus regarding wellness. But since you're at home or wherever you may be listening to this presentation, we really encourage you to talk to your roommates about some of these things, because a lot of what we're going to talk about has to do with communicating your wants and your needs and negotiating those with roommates. So you'll see a bunch of questions on these slides. These are questions that you'll find in the Google form as well, so we're going to encourage you to take some time to think through some of these questions. What are you looking forward to about living off campus? And what are challenges and barriers to well-being you've encountered in previous residential environments? It's good to reflect on challenges you may have encountered before and reflect on what you need to either avoid those challenges or strategies that you can employ to kind of help overcome those challenges. And so when we think of intellectual functioning, for example, you can think about how living off campus and maybe farther away from some of those academic resources that might be easily accessible to you if you had lived on campus, how living farther away from those might impact your well-being, and how do you set up your life and your schedule in order to make time maybe to connect with those resources on campus. Sociocultural functioning, you can think about talking with your roommates about what sorts of social gatherings you might have in your space, what you are and are not comfortable with regarding maybe who comes into the space, how many people are in your space. And we also encourage you to think about social gatherings and parties and what how that might impact you and other people in your residence, and encourage you to have a conversation with ground rules about that. And again, you can go through all of these one by one, think about things that you've encountered previously, and think about what are your needs in each specific category. Some other common things that we talk about in this section of the presentation include a lot of like household management skills. You need to have a conversation about budgeting if people are going to pitch in on collective home goods. What's kind of the plan there? What's the divvying of responsibility? And not just financial. You can think about home upkeep, chores, that sort of thing. Who's going to be responsible for, taking out the garbage, making sure dishes are clean, that sort of thing. And if it's, the responsibility of the individual, how are we going to make sure that, we're all on the same page, that we're agreeing to a certain standard of house upkeep and management, and how we might talk through some challenges if challenges arise. And in regards to communication with roommates about these things, we really encourage consistency and regularity. So maybe setting up a regular time to all get together as a house. Maybe that's, once a week over dinner, or maybe you all plan a monthly activity or something where it's understood that if there are any questions or thoughts that need to be expressed about either, people either living up to or living below the expectations of the house, that you're all talking about those things regularly and in a way that reserves judgment, in a way that's intentional, in a way that promotes self-awareness and acknowledging of positionality. And really what it comes down to is respecting each other's boundaries and advocating for your own boundaries, respecting those boundaries and enforcing those boundaries in a collective way. So you'll see a couple more questions here that you'll also see on the Google Forms that we want you to think critically about. So in order to promote individual and community well-being, the people I live with should know that I need blank. And in order to promote individual and community well-being, the people I live with should know I am flexible when it comes to blank. So again, think about all of those things that I mentioned about household upkeep, about social dynamics within the house, social dynamics at social gatherings that might be hosted, expectations around guests, those sorts of things. And I'm sure there are maybe other things that you can talk with your roommates about, but really communication is going to be key for the well-being of you, the individual, and the well-being of the community within your house. So with that, you'll receive a link to the Google Forms. In order to get credit for this training, we're asking you to thoroughly and accurately fill out that form. We'll receive notice of it once you complete it, and that will fulfill that requirement. All right. Well, thank you again. My name's Chris Walters. I'm a health educator in the Wellness Resource Center. And regarding, the well-being of you, the well-being of the people in your house, you can always come and speak with us at the Wellness Resource Center.
Yes, and Luis Valdez, East Campus RLC. Any questions you might have throughout this process, or in terms of living or anything like that, you do still have an RLC off campus, and that is myself.
And if you have any questions for campus safety or Colorado Springs Police Department, you can reach us at 389-6707.
Thanks.